Captain Lee Dongwu stood on the bridge of the UES Defender, watching the stars through the main view screen. The old battleship had been his home for 12 years now. At 45, Lee had seen more battles than most captains twice his age. His dark eyes showed the calm that came from surviving 3 major wars and countless smaller fights. "Captain," called Lieutenant Park So-jin from the communications station. Her young face looked worried. "We're getting something strange on long-range sensors." Lee walked over to her station. Park had been with his crew for 2 years now. She was smart and rarely got excited about nothing. "What kind of strange?" 12 ships, sir. Unknown design. They just dropped out of hyperspace about 2 million kilometers away." Park's fingers danced across her controls. "They're big. Really big." Chief Engineer Kim Tae-ho looked up from his station near the back of the bridge. The older man had gray hair and hands that were always dirty from working on engines. "How big are we talking about?" "The largest one is maybe 3 times our size," Park replied. "The others are about twice as big as us." Lee nodded slowly. The Defender was not a small ship. At 800 meters long, it could carry 800 crew members, and enough weapons to level a small moon. If these unknown ships were that much bigger, they meant business. "Any response to our standard greeting signals?" Lee asked. "Nothing yet, sir. But—" Park paused and listened to something in her earpiece. "Wait, I'm getting something now. It's not in any language our computers know." Lieutenant Commander Bae Sun-woo, the tactical officer, spoke up from his station. "Captain, they're moving toward us. Slow but steady. All 12 ships in formation." Lee looked at the main screen. 12 dots were getting bigger as they approached. He had faced unknown ships before, but never this many at once. Still, his voice remained calm. "Red alert, all hands to battle stations, but keep weapons powered. Down for now." The bridge lights dimmed to red. Throughout the ship, 800 crew members moved to their posts. These were good people, Lee thought. They had been through hell together and always came out the other side. "Sir," Park said, her voice more urgent now. "They're trying to communicate. The computer is working on the translation. Put it through the speakers when you have something," Lee ordered. Navigator Officer Oh Hye-jin looked up from her station. She was the youngest officer on the bridge, barely 25, but she knew space like others knew their own homes. "Captain, should I plot a course out of here? We could jump to hyperspace in 30 seconds. "Not yet," Lee said. "Let's see what they want first." The main screen flickered and changed. Instead of stars, they now saw the bridge of an alien ship. The creatures standing there looked almost like humans, but taller and thinner. Their skin was pale blue, and their eyes were much larger than human eyes. The one in the center wore what looked like a military uniform covered in golden decorations. When the alien spoke, the ship's computer translated his words into English. The voice sounded proud and cold. "Unknown vessel. I am Admiral Kethva of the Valerian Empire. You are now in space, claimed by our empire. Surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded." Lee raised an eyebrow. That was direct. He looked around his bridge. His crew was ready for anything. Commander Yoon Ji-hee, his weapons officer, had her hand near the fire controls but kept them off. Dr. Choi Min-ho, the science officer, was already scanning the alien ships with every sensor they had. "No response to that, sir?" Park asked quietly. "Not yet. Let's see what else they have to say." Admiral Kethva continued speaking. "We have conquered 47 worlds across 3 sectors of space. 62 different species now serve the Valerian Empire. You will be the 63rd. The alien pointed at something off-screen. "We know you are alone. 1 small ship against 12 of our finest warships. Your weapons are primitive. Your shields are weak. There is no shame in surrender." Lee almost smiled at that. The Defender might be old, but primitive was not a word anyone who knew human ships would use. "We will scan your vessel now to confirm its capabilities," Admiral Kethva announced. "Do not resist, or we will destroy you." Dr. Choi looked up from his station. "Captain, they're starting a deep scan of our ship. Very thorough. They're looking at everything. Engines, weapons, shields, hull composition." "Let them look," Lee said calmly. "In fact, make sure they get a complete picture." "Sir?" Dr. Choi looked confused. "You heard me. Drop our sensor shields. Let them scan everything they want to see." Commander Yoon looked over at Lee with surprise. "Captain, if they see what we're really carrying—" "That's exactly the point," Lee replied. "Sometimes the best weapon is the truth." On the alien ship's bridge, a Valerian technician was reading the scan results. His name was Morden, and he had been scanning enemy ships for 20 years. He had seen every type of engine, every kind of weapon, every design of shield generator that the Empire had ever faced, but the readings coming from the human ship made no sense. "Admiral," Morden called out, his voice shaking slightly. "You need to see this." "What is it?" Admiral Kethva walked over to the scanner station. "Are their weapons as weak as expected?" Morden stared at his screens. The numbers were impossible. "Sir, their power source is reading as a matter-antimatter reactor system, but the energy output it's 3 times what our main ships produce." "That cannot be correct. Check your equipment." "I've checked it twice, sir. The readings are accurate." Morden's voice got quieter. "Admiral, their hull is made from metamaterials I've never seen before. Our plasma cannons would barely scratch it." Admiral Kethva felt a cold feeling in his stomach. "What about their weapons?" "That's the problem, sir. The computer can't identify their weapon systems. It just says unknown technology. Extreme threat level for everything." Back on the Defender, Dr. Choi reported to Captain Lee. "Sir, they've completed their scan. Based on their communication patterns, I think they're having some trouble believing the results." Lee nodded. "Open a channel. To their ship. Channel open, sir." Lee looked directly at the screen where Admiral Kethva's confused face appeared. When Lee spoke, his voice was polite but firm. "Admiral Kethva, I'm Captain Lee Dong-woo of the United Earthship Defender. We've received your demands for surrender." Lee paused and smiled slightly. "Based on your recent scan of our ship, would you like to reconsider those demands?" The alien bridge had gone completely silent. Admiral Kethva stared at the human captain with growing horror as the full meaning of the scan results hit him. They had made a terrible mistake. Admiral Kethva stared at the human captain on his screen. The calm smile on the alien's face made his blue blood run cold. Around him, his bridge crew whispered in shocked voices as they read the scan results over and over again. "Morden," Kethva said quietly, not taking his eyes off Captain Lee. "Run the scan again. There must be an error." The technician's hands shook as he worked his controls. "Admiral, I've run it 5 times now. The results are the same every time. This human ship has technology that's—" He paused, searching for the right words. "It's beyond anything we've ever seen." On the main screen, Captain Lee waited patiently. His brown eyes showed no fear, no anger, just the calm confidence of someone who knew exactly what cards he was holding. "The power readings alone," Morden continued, his voice getting smaller. "Sir, their reactor puts out more energy than our entire fleet combined. And their hull composition, I don't even know what some of these materials are. Science officer." Veltar, an older Valerian with many years of experience, spoke up from his station. "Admiral, we need to withdraw immediately. We're not dealing with a primitive species." "Silence," Kethva snapped. But inside, he felt doubt growing like ice in his chest. The Valerian Empire had never met a species they couldn't conquer. They had the best ships, the best weapons, the best technology in 3 sectors of space. How could one small ship from an unknown race be more advanced than their entire civilization? Back on the Defender, Dr. Choi looked up from his science station. "Captain, I'm reading massive confusion in their communication patterns. Their heart rates are elevated. I think they're starting to panic." Lieutenant Park So-jin adjusted her earpiece. Sir, I'm picking up internal communications on their ships. The computer is translating bits and pieces. It sounds like they can't believe our scan results. Captain Lee nodded. Commander Yoon, are you ready for a small demonstration? Commander Yoon Ji-hai looked up from her weapons console. She was a small woman, but Lee had never met anyone better with ship weapons. Her fingers moved across the controls like a pianist playing a favorite song. Always ready, Captain. What did you have in mind? Something gentle. We don't want to start a war on the first day we meet new neighbors. Lee turned to Dr. Choi. Doctor, scan the area around us. Find me a small asteroid. Nothing too big. There's one about 50,000 kilometers away, sir, maybe 10 meters across. Perfect. Commander Yoon, can you hit that with a point defense laser? Yoon smiled. 50,000 kilometers? Sir, our point defense system is designed to hit missiles that are only a few hundred meters away. At 50,000 kilometers? She paused, thinking. Actually, yes. The new targeting system should be able to handle it. Then please show our new friends what human point defense looks like. On the Valerian flagship, Morden noticed new energy readings from the human ship. Admiral, they're powering up some kind of weapon system, very small, but the energy signature is unlike anything I've ever seen. Are they targeting us? Kethva demanded. No, sir, they're aiming at an asteroid. It's 50,000 kilometers away from them. Admiral Kethva felt his confusion grow. Why would they shoot at a rock so far away? No ship in the Valerian fleet could hit anything accurately at that distance with their biggest guns, let alone a small defensive weapon. They're firing, Mordoon reported. A thin beam of blue light shot out from the human ship. It was so fast that the Valerian sensors almost missed it. The beam crossed 50,000 kilometers in less than a second and touched the small asteroid. The Bayaba rock simply disappeared. There was no explosion, no debris field, no flash of light. One moment there was an asteroid, and the next moment there was empty space. The Valerian bridge fell completely silent. What just happened? Kethva whispered. Veltar checked his sensors 3 times before answering. The asteroid was completely vaporized, sir, at the molecular level. There's nothing left but individual atoms floating in space. That's impossible. No weapon can do that. The human weapon just did, sir. Captain Lee's voice came through the communication system again, still calm and polite. I hope that demonstration was helpful, Admiral Kethva. That was just one of our smaller defensive weapons. The asteroid was completely destroyed, as I'm sure your sensors confirmed. Kethva found his voice, though it sounded weak even to his own ears. What are you? We're humans, Lee replied simply. We're from a planet called Earth. We've been exploring space for about 1,000 years now. This is actually our first time meeting your species. That weapon, Kethva said, pointing at the screen. No species we've ever encountered has anything like that. Well, to be honest, that wasn't really a weapon. That was a point defense laser. It's designed to shoot down incoming missiles and small attack craft. Think of it as pest control. The words hit the Valerian admiral like a physical blow. Their most powerful weapons couldn't destroy a target at 50,000 kilometers. The humans had just done it with what they called pest control. Commander Yoon looked over at Captain Lee. Sir, should I show them what our main guns can do? Not. Yet, Commander, I think we've made our point. Lee turned back to the screen. Admiral Kethva, I believe you mentioned something about surrender earlier? The alien admiral's face had gone from pale blue to almost white. Around him, his crew stared at their instruments in shock. Everything they thought they knew about space warfare had just been proven wrong. You said you were alone? Kethva said, weakly. This ship is alone, yes, but we're not the only human ship in space. Lee paused. Tell me, Admiral, when your empire encounters a new species, Do you always demand surrender as an opening statement? We have always been the most powerful. I see. And how has that worked out for you? Kethva looked around his bridge. His crew was listening to every word. For the first time in his military career, he didn't know what to say. Captain Lee, he said finally, perhaps we should discuss this situation more carefully. I think that's a very good idea, Lee replied. But first I need to ask you something important. Do you have more ships coming? Because if you do, you should probably tell them to approach very carefully. Why? Because my ship is 40 years old, Admiral. It's actually scheduled to be retired next year. Lee's smile got a little bigger. The newer human ships are much more impressive. Admiral Kethva felt the deck seemed to shift under his feet. If this ancient human ship could vaporize asteroids at impossible distances, what could their modern warships do? For the first time in his life, the Admiral of the Valerian Empire was truly afraid. Admiral Kethva stood on his bridge, staring at the human ship on his screen. Around him, his officers waited for orders. The silence stretched out like a knife blade. Sir? His tactical officer, Sub-Commander Holtera, asked quietly. What are your orders? Kethva felt anger rising in his chest. The Valerian Empire had never backed down from anyone. They were the rulers of 3 sectors of space. 62 conquered species served them. He was not going to be the first admiral to run from a single enemy ship, no matter what their sensors said. The humans are lying, he announced loudly. No species could have such advanced technology and remain unknown to us. They're using some kind of trick to fool our scanners. Science. Officer Veltar looked up from his station. Admiral, with respect, I've checked our sensors multiple times. The readings are accurate. The human ship really does have... I said they're lying. Kethva's voice echoed across the bridge. One old ship against our entire fleet? It's impossible. Turned to his tactical officer. Holtra, order all ships to surround the human vessel. Battle formation. If they want to play games, we'll show them what real military power looks like. Sir? Veltar tried again. I strongly recommend we contact the Empire first. Get more information about these humans before we... No. Kethva's eyes blazed with pride and fury. I will not be remembered as the admiral who ran from primitives. We attack. On the human ship, Lieutenant Commander Bei Sunwoo watched his tactical display as the 12 Valerian ships spread out around them. The aliens moved slowly but with purpose, taking positions that would let them attack from all directions. Captain, Bei reported, they're surrounding us. Classic encirclement pattern. All ships are powering up weapons and shields. Captain Lee sighed deeply. He had hoped the demonstration with the asteroid would be enough to avoid bloodshed. Any response to our offer to talk? Lieutenant Park shook her head. No, sir. Radio silence from their flagship. Navigator Oh Hye-jin looked up from her position. Captain, I can plot several escape routes. We could be in hyperspace before they complete their formation. I know, Lee said quietly. But if we run now, they'll think we're weak. They'll follow us, probably call for more ships, and eventually we'll have a real war on our hands. Chief Engineer Kim Tae-ho walked up to the captain's chair. His weathered face looked concerned. Sir, are we really going to fight 12 ships? I mean, I know what the Defender can do, but... Kim, in your opinion, could those ships hurt us? Lee asked. The old engineer thought for a moment. Their plasma weapons might scratch our outer hull if they all fired at the exact same spot for about an hour. Their missiles would bounce off, our shields like raindrops. No, sir, they can't hurt us. And could we disable their ships without killing their crews? Easily. Our precision targeting system can hit their engines and weapon systems while leaving life support alone. But, Captain, if we show them what we can really do, they'll know humans are not to be messed with, Lee finished. Sometimes you have to be cruel to be kind. He looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were good people who had followed him through 3 wars. They trusted his judgment even when they didn't understand his plans. "All right," Lee said, sitting back in his captain's chair. "One more try. Park, open a channel to all Valerian ships." "Channel open, sir." Lee's voice carried across space to 12 alien warships. "Admiral Kethva, this is Captain Lee. I'm going to make you one final offer. I'll transmit the technical specifications for one of our standard torpedoes. Look at the data. Really look at it. Then decide if you want to continue with this attack." On the Valerian flagship, Morden received the human transmission. The technical data appeared on his screen in neat, organized charts and diagrams. As he read, his face grew more and more pale. "Admiral," he called out, his voice cracking, "you need to see this torpedo design." Kethva walked over, still angry but curious despite himself. "What about it?" "Sir, according to this data, their torpedo contains a quantum-entangled warhead. It can adjust its explosive power even after it's been fired. It can phase through our shield frequencies, and the yield—" Morden stopped, checking the numbers again. "Sir, one of their torpedoes could destroy our largest battleship." "Impossible. The math is all here, Admiral. I don't understand half of it. But what I do understand is terrifying. They're showing us technology that shouldn't exist." Veltar had been listening from his station. Now he stood up, his old body shaking with fear and excitement. "Admiral, we're not looking at a primitive species. We're looking at something that might be thousands of years ahead of us technologically." "You're both cowards," Kethva snarled. But even as he said it, doubt gnawed at his mind. The torpedo specifications looked real. The asteroid demonstration had been real. What if the humans weren't bluffing? His communications officer spoke up. "Admiral, Captain Lee is asking for a response." Kethva looked around his bridge. His crew was scared. Even Holtra, his bravest tactical officer, looked uncertain. But the Admiral's pride would not let him back down. The entire Valerian Empire would hear about this encounter. If he retreated, his career would be over. "Tell the human captain that the Valerian Empire does not negotiate with unknowns," he announced. "All ships, this is Admiral Kethva. Attack. Pattern 7. Target the human ship from all angles. Fire on my command." On the Defender, Dr. Choi shook his head sadly. "Captain, they're not responding to reason. All 12 ships are charging weapons." Captain Lee closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, they were hard as steel. "Commander Yoon, are all our defensive systems ready?" "Yes, sir. Shields at full power, point defense systems online, electronic warfare suite active." "Bay, do you have firing solutions on all enemy ships?" "Locked and ready, sir. I can disable their engines and weapons without harming their crews." "Good. When they fire, you are authorized to return fire. Take them down fast and clean." Lee turned to Park. "Send one final message to Admiral Kethva. Tell him I'm sorry it came to this." Across space on the Valerian flagship, Admiral Kethva received the human message. For just a moment, something in Captain Lee's tone made him hesitate. The human sounded genuinely sad, like a parent about to discipline a foolish child. But it was too late for second thoughts. His fleet was in position. His reputation was on the line. The pride of the Valerian Empire demanded action. "All ships," he commanded, "fire everything you have." 12 Valerian warships opened fire at once. Hundreds of plasma bolts and energy missiles streaked through space toward the single human battleship. The combined firepower was enough to level a city. Captain Lee watched the incoming fire on his main screen and sighed deeply. "Commander Yoon," he said quietly, "weapons free. Show them what humanity can do." Commander Yoon Ji-hai's hands moved across her weapons console like a master musician playing a complex song. Around her, the Defender's bridge hummed with quiet efficiency as the crew did what they had trained for thousands of times. Defensive. Systems active, she reported calmly. Incoming fire detected. Multiple plasma bolts and energy missiles. Captain Lee watched the main screen as hundreds of bright lights streaked toward his ship. To most people, it would look like certain death. To someone who had survived the Centauri Wars, it looked like a light show. Evasive maneuvers, Lee ordered. Navigator Oh Hyejin's fingers danced across her controls. The Defender moved like nothing the Valerians had ever seen. Instead of the slow, heavy turns of normal warships, the human ship twisted and spun through space like a dancer. The advanced inertial dampeners kept the crew safe while the ship performed maneuvers that should have been impossible. How are they moving like that? Sub-Commander Holtra gasped on the Valerian flagship. He watched in amazement as the human ship slipped between plasma bolts like water flowing around stones. The first wave of Valerian fire missed completely. Every shot, hundreds of energy bolts and missiles flew through empty space while the human ship danced away from them. Second wave, fire! Admiral Kethva shouted. More weapons fire filled space, but again, the human ship moved away from every attack. It was like trying to hit a bird with stones while blindfolded. On the Defender, Chief Engineer Kim Tae-ho monitored his systems with satisfaction. Captain, the new engine modifications are working perfectly. We're pulling 15 Gs in those turns, but the dampeners are handling it easily. Excellent work, Kim. Commander Yoon, are you ready to respond? Yoon smiled grimly. Sir, I have targeting solutions on all 12 ships. Precision strikes to disable engines and weapons only. Make it happen. The Defender's response was nothing, like the wild spray of fire the Valerians had used. Instead, single beams of energy reached out with surgical precision. The first beam hit the engine section of the nearest Valerian ship. There was no explosion, no fire, just a quiet shutdown as the alien ship's power systems failed. What happened to the Vortak? Admiral Kethva demanded as one of his ships suddenly went dark. Engine failure, sir, Morden reported, his voice shaking. Complete system shutdown. But life support is still working. Before Kethva could respond, two more of his ships went silent. The human weapons reached across impossible distances and struck with perfect accuracy. Each shot hit exactly where it needed to disable the ship without harming the crew. Return fire! All ships, keep firing! Kethva screamed, but his remaining ships couldn't hit their target. The human vessel moved through space like it was dancing to music only it could hear. Every Valerian shot missed, while every human shot found its mark. Lieutenant Commander Bae Sun-woo watched his tactical display with professional admiration. Commander Yoon, that last shot curved around 3 asteroids before hitting their weapon system. How did you calculate that trajectory? I didn't, Yoon replied, not taking her eyes off her controls. The targeting computer did. It can calculate ballistics that account for gravitational fields, solar wind, and magnetic interference all at the same time. On the main screen, another Valerian ship went dark, then another. The alien fleet was being taken apart piece by piece, and they couldn't do anything to stop it. Dr. Choi monitored the alien communications from his science station. Captain, their radio chatter is getting desperate. They're trying to retreat, but we've disabled their engines. Any casualties on their ships? Lee asked. None, sir. Life support is working on all vessels. Their crews are shaken but unharmed. Captain Lee nodded with satisfaction. This was how human military doctrine worked. Overwhelming force applied with surgical precision. End fights quickly and cleanly with minimum loss of life. Time check? He asked. 4 minutes, 10 seconds since they opened fire, Bae reported. On the Valerian flagship, panic was spreading. Admiral Kethva watched his fleet being destroyed ship by ship, and there was nothing he could do about it. His weapons couldn't hit the human vessel, and his ships were sitting ducks with their engines disabled. Sir, Veltar called out from his science station. I'm detecting massive power buildup on the human ship. They're targeting us directly. Shields at maximum, Kethva ordered. Sir, if their weapons are anything like what they've already shown us, our shields won't help. The Human beam reached out and touched the Valerian flagship. Kethva braced for death, but instead of an explosion, there was just a gentle vibration through the deck. Then all the lights went out except for emergency power. "Damage report!" Kethva shouted in the dim red lighting. "All weapon systems offline," Holtera reported in a shaky voice. "Engines dead, main power grid down, but life support is working normally." "How is that possible?" Veltar checked his instruments with a handheld scanner, the only thing still working at his station. "Sir, they hit our main power coupling with perfect precision. Took out military systems but left everything we need to stay alive." "Admiral." Kethva sank into his command chair as the full reality hit him. The human ship had destroyed his entire fleet in less than 5 minutes. Not destroyed, disabled. Every ship was still intact. Every crew member still alive, but they were completely helpless. The human ship moved closer to the flagship, no longer dancing and weaving. It approached slowly, like a predator that knew its prey couldn't escape. "Captain." Lee's voice came through the emergency communication system. "Admiral Kethva, this is Captain Lee. Are you ready to talk now?" The Valerian admiral looked around his darkened bridge. His proud fleet was scattered around them like broken toys. His weapons were useless. His engines were dead. His crew was looking at him with fear and confusion. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Kethva had been completely defeated. "Yes," he said quietly into the communicator. "We're ready to talk." "Excellent. I'm going to dock with your ship so we can meet face to face. Please don't try anything foolish. My crew is watching your ship very carefully." As the human vessel moved alongside the flagship, Kethva realized something that made his blood freeze. During the entire battle, the human ship had never used its main weapons. Everything they had done was with what Captain Lee called defensive systems and precision targeting. If this was what human defensive weapons could do, what were their real weapons capable of? "Admiral," Veltar whispered, "what are we going to do?" Kethva stared at the human ship through the emergency viewport. It looked so small and harmless, this vessel that had just destroyed the pride of the Valerian fleet without breaking a sweat. "We're going to learn," he said finally, "exactly what kind of species we just tried to conquer." The docking tube connected with a soft thump that echoed through the Valerian flagship's emergency-lit corridors. Admiral Kethva stood in the main airlock, surrounded by his senior officers. They had no weapons. Everything had been disabled by the precise human attack. When the airlock opened, Kethva got his first close look at the species that had just defeated his entire fleet. Captain Lee Dong-woo stepped through first, wearing a simple blue uniform with no decoration except for small rank insignia. He was smaller than Kethva had expected, maybe average height for a human, with dark hair and calm brown eyes. Behind him came 4 other humans, including a large man in different-colored uniform who was obviously a soldier. "Admiral Kethva," Captain Lee said with a polite bow. "Thank you for agreeing to meet. I'm sorry about the circumstances." The Valerian admiral stared at these strange beings. They looked so normal, so unremarkable. How could such ordinary-looking creatures possess such incredible power? "You're smaller than I expected," Kethva said without thinking. Captain Lee smiled. "We get that a lot. Size isn't everything, Admiral. May I present my officers? This is Colonel Nam Woo Jin, our Marine Commander. Dr. Choi Min Ho, our Science Officer. Lieutenant Commander Bae Sun Woo, Tactical. And Navigator Oh Hye-jin." Each human nodded politely. They seemed relaxed, like they were visiting friends instead of standing on a conquered enemy ship. "Shall we go somewhere more comfortable?" "To talk," Lee suggested. "We have a lot to discuss." Kethva led them to the ship's main conference room. The emergency lighting cast strange shadows on the walls, but it was better than standing in the hallway. As they sat around the large table, the Admiral noticed that the humans seemed genuinely interested in the room's design and layout. Interesting. Architecture, Dr. Choi commented, looking at the curved ceiling. Very efficient use of space. Thank you, Kethva said automatically. Then he caught himself. Why was he being polite to his conquerors? Captain Lee seemed to read his thoughts. Admiral, we're not here to conquer anyone. We're explorers, not conquerors. What happened out there was unfortunate. Unfortunate, Kethva's voice rose. You destroyed my entire fleet. We disabled your fleet, Colonel Nam corrected gently. Every one of your ships can be repaired. Every member of your crews is alive and unharmed. That's not possible. No species has weapons that precise. Dr. Choi opened a small device that projected a holographic display above the table. Admiral, may I show you something? This is a record of our recent engagement. The hologram showed the battle from the human ship's perspective. Kethva watched in amazement as targeting systems tracked hundreds of variables at once, calculating exactly where to hit each ship for maximum disable with minimum damage. Each shot was planned to shut down your military systems while preserving life support, Dr. Choi explained. Our weapons can adjust their power output and targeting mid-flight. What you experienced was actually our most gentle setting. Most gentle? Veltar, who had been allowed to attend the meeting, leaned forward. What do your weapons normally do? Lieutenant Commander Bay answered. Normally, we don't hold back, but Captain Lee ordered precision strikes because we didn't want to start a war over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Admiral Kethva felt anger rising again. You call demanding our surrender a misunderstanding? Admiral, Captain Lee said patiently, let me ask you something. How many species has the Valerian Empire encountered that were more advanced than you? None. We are the most advanced civilization in 3 sectors. Were, Colonel Nam said quietly. Until today. Dr. Choi adjusted his holographic display. Admiral, would you like to see what human space looks like? The hologram changed to show a 3-dimensional map of local space. Blue dots represented human colonies and stations. There were hundreds of them, spread across dozens of star systems. This is just our local sector, Dr. Choi said. We have colonies and outposts in 47 star systems. The total human population in space is about 12 billion people. Kethva stared at the display. The Valerian Empire controlled 3 sectors, but most of their systems had only mining stations or military bases. The humans seem to have built entire civilizations in space. But what shocked us, Dr. Choi continued, is that this is the first time we've encountered another spacefaring species in this region. We've been exploring for centuries, and we thought we were alone out here. Where did you come from? Veltar asked. Navigator. O spoke up for the first time. Earth is about 200 light years from here. We've been expanding outward for almost 1,000 years. 1,000 years in space, Kethva said slowly. And you never conquered anyone? The humans exchanged glances. Captain Lee's expression grew serious. Admiral, we learned early that conquest is not a good survival strategy. What do you mean? Dr. Choi changed the holographic display again. Now it showed what looked like a massive battle in space. Thousands of ships were fighting against things that didn't look like ships at all. They looked like living creatures the size of moons. 300 years ago, Dr. Choi began, we encountered something we call the Void Hunters. They were artificial intelligences that had consumed entire galaxies, turning all matter into more of themselves. The holographic battle was terrifying to watch. Human ships that made the Defender look tiny were being destroyed by creatures that defied description. We barely survived, Captain Lee said quietly. It took everything we had, every ship, every weapon, every human in space working. Together we won, but just barely. After that, Colonel Nam added, we realized that the universe has much worse things in it than territorial empires. We stopped thinking about conquest and started thinking about survival. Lieutenant Commander Bay brought up another display. This happened 50 years later. Something we call the Shadow Fleet, ships from another dimension that fed on intelligent thought. More battles appeared in the hologram. This time, the human ships looked more like the Defender, but they were fighting things that seemed to bend, light around themselves. And 30 years after that, Dr. Choi said, we found evidence of the Seed Makers, ancient machines that planted life throughout the galaxy, then returned to harvest it when it became advanced enough. Admiral Kethva felt his world shifting. You've fought all these things? Fought them, studied them, learned from them, Captain Lee confirmed. Each encounter taught us that military technology isn't just about defeating other species. It's about surviving things that are beyond normal understanding. The Defender, Navigator O said, is built to fight enemies that can manipulate time, phase through matter, or exist in multiple dimensions at once. Your plasma weapons and energy shields are, well, they're designed for fighting other normal species. That's why we seemed so advanced to you, Dr. Choi explained. We've spent centuries preparing for threats that are much more dangerous than conventional warfare. Veltar looked at the holographic displays with growing horror and fascination. Are these threats still out there? Some of them, Captain Lee said simply. That's why every human ship is built like the Defender. We never know when we might encounter something that defies everything we understand about physics. Admiral Kethva sat back in his chair. So, when you said this ship was old and scheduled for retirement, I meant it, Lee confirmed. The new human battleships are 3 times larger and significantly more advanced. But even they're just patrol vessels compared to our deep space exploration ships. And you've never used this technology to conquer other species? Captain Lee looked directly at Kethva. Admiral, when you've fought things that can eat stars, other intelligent species stop looking like enemies. They start looking like potential allies. The conference room fell silent, except for the hum of emergency life support. Admiral Kethva felt everything he thought he knew about the universe crumbling around him. What happens now? He asked quietly. Now, Captain Lee said, we help you fix your ships, and you tell your empire that humanity would like to establish diplomatic relations. Because, Admiral, if we've learned one thing from our history, it's that when the really dangerous things come back, we're going to need all the friends we can get. 2 hours later, Admiral Kethva stood on his repaired bridge watching the Defender's engineering teams finish fixing his ship's systems. The humans worked with quiet efficiency, using tools and techniques he had never seen before. His engines were running better than they had in years. Sir, his communications officer called out, we're receiving a hyperspace signal from the Empire. It's Fleet Admiral Zorthak with the main battle group. Kethva felt ice in his veins. How many ships? 200, sir. The entire 4th Fleet. They're dropping out of hyperspace now. Through the main viewport, space suddenly filled with ships. Massive Valerian battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and support vessels appeared in perfect formation. It was the largest fleet the Empire had ever assembled, brought together to investigate why Kethva's scout group had gone silent. On the Defender, Captain Lee watched the arriving fleet with interest, but no apparent concern. Impressive, he said to Lieutenant Commander Bay. They move well together. Sir, Park reported from communications, the alien fleet is hailing us. Multiple channels, all demanding surrender. Put the fleet commander through. The main screen showed the bridge of a massive Valerian battleship. Fleet Admiral Zorthak was even larger than Kethva, with more decorations on his uniform and scars across his blue face that spoke of many battles. Unknown vessel, Zorthak's voice boomed. You are surrounded by the 4th Fleet of the Valerian Empire. Release Admiral Kethva immediately and surrender, or be destroyed. Captain Lee looked at the 200 warships surrounding his single old battleship. Park, open a channel to Admiral Kethva's ship as well. Let them both hear this. When both channels were open, Lee spoke calmly. Fleet Admiral Zorthak, this is Captain Lee Dongwu of the human vessel Defender. Admiral Kethva is safe and unharmed, as are all his crew members. We were just having a diplomatic discussion. Diplomatic? Zorthak laughed harshly. One primitive ship against the might of the Empire? Your diplomacy ends now. You have 30 seconds to surrender. On Kethva's ship, the Admiral grabbed his communicator. Zorthak, stop! You don't understand what you're facing! Kethva, what is your status? Sir, the humans, they're not what we thought. Their technology is far beyond ours. You need to stand down immediately. Fleet Admiral Zorthak's face showed confusion and anger. Impossible! No species is more advanced than the Empire. Captain Lee's voice cut through the argument. Gentlemen, you have 20 seconds to make a decision. I would prefer to resolve this peacefully. 20 seconds? Zorthak snarled. You dare threaten the Fourth Fleet? I'm not threatening anyone, Lee replied patiently. I'm just letting you know that in 20 seconds, you're going to have company. Dr. Choi looked up from his science station. Captain, quantum fold signatures detected. Right on schedule. What's a quantum fold? Admiral Kethva asked nervously. It's how our newer ships travel, Captain Lee explained. Much faster than hyperspace. Space twisted and bent near the human ship. Reality seemed to fold in on itself, and then suddenly there was another vessel beside the Defender. This new ship was enormous, easily 3 times the size of the Defender and 10 times the size of the largest Valerian battleship. The UES Retribution hung in space like a metal mountain. Its hull was sleek black metal that seemed to absorb light. Weapon ports dotted its surface like stars. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. On the Valerian Fleet flagship, every sensor alarm was screaming at once. Sir, the scanning officer reported in a shaking voice. The new ship's power output it's impossible. Our computers can't even calculate it. Fleet Admiral Zorthak stared at the massive human vessel. How big is it? 15 kilometers long, sir. And the weapons, there are hundreds of them, maybe thousands. A new voice came through the communication system, calm and confident. This is Admiral Kang Unji of the UES Retribution. Captain Lee, I happen to be in the neighborhood. Do you need assistance with pest control? Captain Lee smiled. Hello, Yunji. Actually, we were just making new friends. Admiral Kethva and Fleet. Admiral Zorthak, this is an old friend of mine. Admiral Kang's voice carried a hint of amusement. New friends? How wonderful. I do hope they're more polite than the last species we met. What happened to the last species? Zorthak asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. They tried to invade one of our colony worlds, Admiral Kang replied casually. We had to relocate their entire fleet to a different star system. Took all afternoon. Relocate, Kethva whispered. Gravity manipulation technology, Captain Lee explained. Sometimes it's easier to move threatening ships than to destroy them. Fleet Admiral Zorthak looked around his bridge. His officers were staring at their instruments in shock. The human battleship's presence had completely overwhelmed their sensors. They couldn't even scan it properly. Sir, his tactical officer reported, our weapons are detecting the new ship as a planet. The mass readings are impossible. On the Retribution, Admiral Kang continued speaking in her friendly tone. Captain Lee, you should probably wrap up your cultural exchange. The 7th Fleet will be here in an hour for the scheduled war games. War games? Admiral Kethva asked weakly. Just training exercises, Captain Lee assured him. We practice fighting against impossible odds. Usually involves about 50 ships like the Retribution. The implications hit both Valerian admirals at the same time. If this massive ship was just one of 50 in a training exercise, and the Defender was considered outdated, then humanity's true military power was beyond imagination. Fleet Admiral Zorthak, Captain Lee said formally, I believe Admiral Kethva was trying to explain something to you about diplomatic relations. Zorthak found his voice, though it sounded much smaller than before. Yes, yes, perhaps we should discuss this more carefully. Excellent, Lee replied. Yunji, would you mind giving our new friends a small demonstration of why diplomacy is usually better than warfare? My pleasure. The massive human ship moved forward slowly. As it approached the Valerian fleet, something incredible happened. The 200 warships began to move apart, creating a clear path through their formation. But they weren't moving under their own power. Sir, the Valerian scanning officer whispered, they're using gravity fields to gently push our ships aside. The Retribution passed through the center of the fleet, like a whale swimming through a school of fish. The Valerian ships bobbed gently in its wake, completely helpless but unharmed. As you can see, Admiral Kang's voice came through the communications. We could rearrange your entire fleet if we wanted to, but we'd rather just be friends. Fleet Admiral Zorthak slumped in his command chair. His entire worldview had just been turned upside down. The Valerian Empire, the most powerful civilization he knew, was like a child playing with toys compared to these humans. What do you want from us? He asked quietly. Captain Lee's voice was gentle but serious. Admiral, we want to offer you a choice. You can continue trying to conquer other species in this region of space, or you can join something bigger. What do you mean? Dr. Choi's voice joined the conversation. We're part of an alliance of species that work together to defend against threats from outside our galaxy. The Valerians could be valuable members of that alliance. What kind of threats? Zorthak asked. Admiral Kang answered. The kind that make our ships look small. Captain Lee, shall I show them the coordinates for Sector 78? That's a good idea. Data flowed to both Valerian flagships. The information showed a region of space where something was building structures the size of solar systems. Something that had already consumed 3 minor civilizations and was growing stronger. That, Captain Lee explained, is why we build ships like the Retribution, not to fight other intelligent species, but to protect all intelligent species from things that view us as food. Admiral Kethva studied the data with growing horror. This thing, it's heading toward inhabited space. Eventually, yes. That's why we need allies, Admiral. The universe is full of wonderful, diverse species like yours. But it's also full of things that want to destroy everything we've built. Fleet Admiral Zorthak looked around his bridge at officers who had spent their careers conquering weaker species. For the first time, he understood how small they really were. What would this alliance require from us? He asked. Share information, coordinate defenses, help each other survive, Captain Lee replied. Instead of conquering other species, help us protect them. And if we refuse? Admiral Kang's voice was still friendly, but there was steel underneath. Then you're on your own when the real monsters show up. And Admiral, trust me when I say that your ships weren't built to fight the kind of enemies that are really out there. The Valerian fleet hung in space, surrounded by 2 human vessels that could destroy them all without effort. But instead of threats, they were hearing offers of friendship and protection. Fleet Admiral Zorthak made the decision that would change the Valerian Empire forever. Captain Lee, Admiral Kang, we accept your offer of alliance. The Empire would be honored to work with humanity. Captain Lee smiled. Welcome to the neighborhood, Admirals. I think you're going to find that the universe is much more interesting than you ever imagined. As the human and Valerian ships began exchanging diplomatic data, Admiral Kethva realized something profound.